Quick, we got to remediate and mitigate these vulnerabilities. How the heck do we do that? You better stick around to find out.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, more CySA Plus, and we're going to start this one off with a definition here. You know, the definition of normality is operating in between the averages. Dan, how the heck do we establish the averages?
Yeah, that's right, because what are we talking about, right? We're talking today about remediation, mitigation. Remediation and mitigating what, right? Vulnerabilities. How do you know it's a vulnerability? Because it is, because the scanner says this. How does the scanner know that, right? These are the idea. What we're trying to do is roll back. We need to know what good looks like before we know what bad looks like. And the way we do that is by taking baselines. Baselines are a key in the mitigation and remediation process. I need to know that this is how this should look. This is how much activity should be going on. Now, a lot of times vulnerabilities may be certain things that you can't take necessarily a baseline for. That was normally how it ran. Well, it was normally running badly, so doesn't mean it's good. So we always try to start any machine, any new device or system that's going into our environments needs to have baselines taken so that we can make those distinctions a whole lot better, right? That's the purpose of taking baselines. So what do we mean? It's basically our measuring stick that says, this is what the normal traffic looks like on this machine. This is what the normal services and software are being used on this device. In our environment, it's not uncommon for us to see a spike in this or that during these times or these activities or whatever. Again, going back to the idea of we don't know that that's the case, we're gonna have a harder time spotting and therefore mitigating against those vulnerabilities. So what do I mean by this? How do we do a baseline assessment? Well, it can be complex. You can use something like Fluke Networks devices to get network traffic analytics going on, or maybe something like SolarWinds, Nagios. All these things can take great metrics and give you, and highly recommend them, great tools, a lot of them, but maybe you don't have the money or you just want to get started on something. Baselines don't have to be complex. They can be as simple as, what's my IP address? What's my MAC address? What's the host name of this device? What's the software and services that it's running normally? I can get all that information and gather that up so that I can start looking, and I can use this for those remediations and so on and so forth. So let's jump into my computer here, and something as easy as an IP adder, and you can see I've got my IP address. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to put that in the documentation that goes along with this device. What else? There's, I guess they don't have a MAC address. There's a broadcast address there. MAC address doesn't, or is that, there it is. That's the INET 6 address. So write that down. All the information I can about this device and what it should be running. Maybe I do I'll just clear an ifconfig, get more information there. I can see that this is on ETH0. I've got a low adapter with 127. Okay, loopback's good and running. Take that information, pipe it out to just maybe a text file. I like this one too. Netstat, it's ANTUP. Just gonna grab all the like TCP and UDP and show me the ports so I can see that port 5432 is in a listening state on this address. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. If I don't know those things, I can't start mitigating against it. I can't say, oh, that's weird. I need to now check on that and see, oh, my scanner popped it too. Man, we really need to look into this because in my baseline, port 5432 on device on the loopback wasn't running before. This is Postgres, apparently. So I get all that information, again, put it in my documentation so I can start seeing truth from error kind of idea. I always like to tell you to look for the big four, right? Something like HTOP can help us out with that. I don't have HTOP installed, so there you go. What is a good tool? It gives you more graphic. I have top, I'm sure. And there you go. I'm getting things like CPU and memory and what's free and what's being used. I want to get an idea of what this normally looks like. I'm seeing processes that are running. And speaking of processes, I can quit out of there. Run something like PSAUX. What are the service or the programs that are running, the binaries, they're actually running right now. All this information, this goes toward taking a baseline and will be extremely helpful as you go down the road. And again, Wes, I think you always call these the big four. I think I've heard you call them.
That's right, the four horsemen.
Rattle them off for me. What
That's
are
right.
they?
CPU, networking, memory, and the storage, you know. So one of the things I would think, Dan, right, maybe you've got a web server out there and you look today and it's running 8 gigs of memory, right? It's got something that's consuming 8 gigs of memory. Is that normal?
Right.
I don't know if is it normal. Is that a memory leak? Is that a sign of a vulnerability? So establishing these baselines would help you to determine that fact.
Exactly. And you can do this in like it's activity monitor inside of Mac OS, or if you're on Windows land, you can use the system monitor or the task manager. A lot of these will give these analytics back to you. You can download third-party applications that will gather these informations for you. Just do something to where you know, okay, this is what normal looks like, and I'm good with that. And now, if I've had a vulnerability assessment or I think that an incident is occurring, maybe I got some malware, I can see what the problem is and start to mitigate against it because, oh, I see the outlier. This isn't a part of what normal should look like. I know where to focus my efforts. And that's what it's all about.
You know, Dan and I recently were reading kind of an article that I shared with him, and it's interesting because the United States DoD, if you will, their nuclear platforms are controlled by software that's running on 8-inch floppy disks. It was made in the 70s. And now my first thought was, well, how do you patch them? Those systems? Those systems are so antiquated by now that it's got to be very difficult. So Dan, how does patching apply to remediation or even mitigation at that point?
Great question. Patching is a big deal. I thought you were going to say them systems. I thought it was going to be so funny.
Them systems.
Great. How do you patch them systems there, Daniel? It's a great question, Wes. But patching is one of the best things we can do for remediation because it should be a part of your workload anyway. I was reading, I believe it was John Strand's book. He's from Black Hill Security. Pen tester, guy's a well-known entity in the security space. And he was talking about how a lot of the access that he was able to get during a penetration test was through the fact that they had software that wasn't being patched. They had operating systems that weren't being patched. And I just took advantage of that. So if you run a vulnerability scan, it tells you, hey, there's a known vulnerability with your operating system. And it will, a lot of times, even suggest mitigations of update. There's a patch for that. There's a fix for that. Maybe there's a new version of that software. Go out and download it and use that instead of this version because that version has an issue. That's what we mean when we're talking about patching, updates, upgrades, that kind of stuff, right? Get away from the thing you know has something bad and move to something that has unknown bads because they all have unknown bad stuff, right? Just life. Create a cycle, right? You need to schedule patching out. That needs to be a part of your daily routine. Work all that out and then engage in that as a policy and a process for your organization because it's just too easy to apply patches. Yes, I know patches do sometimes break things, but that's the name of the game, right? That's life. It's a whole lot better to engage in patching and not leave yourself vulnerable and have to fix some broken stuff from time to time than it is to just go, oh, well, I'm not going to do it because it's hard. Not a great strategy in my estimation. I will say sometimes that does work itself out that way, but in my experience, it hasn't been nearly as often as, hey, we just need to apply a patch. Let's do that now. Windows, right? WSUS, use it, know it, love it, right? The Windows Update service, it's great. If you're running a Linux version, do something like apt-get update, apt-get upgrade, or yum update or upgrade. I'm not as familiar with Linux or Red Hat versions as I am with Debian-based, but just jump in there. It's as easy as a one-liner, and you're up to date.
Or setting up and maintaining your internal repos, right? To do
you can automate this stuff. I usually just write a little script. That
Sits down in cron.
Make a cron job, and you're done. I run Linux, obviously, most of the time, but if I'm in Windows, I got Windows Update service. It's all timed out. It's a really easy thing to set up and get going. It's a little bit of work, but it's not too difficult mentally.
And some people might say, well, Wes, we don't work with nuclear systems at my job, and we're not part of the Department of Defense. So you might say, well, that's not applicable to you. Well, I can say maybe not in that scenario, but we're filming this, we're in March of 2020. Maybe some of you remember in January 14th of 2020, one of the major operating systems inside of Windows, they said, no more patches.
Yeah.
Sorry, no more security. Windows 7, right? It is one of the most prolific editions of Windows, and it's still out there, and people are still using it. So understand, yes, it does apply to you. One unpatched system can bring your entire network down. It's all one threat actor needs. Now, Dan, I know there's more of an umbrella term that we talk about when it comes to making sure that our systems are secure. Can you tell us a little bit about the process known as hardening?
Yeah, this is another one of those things that it's just too easy to do, so there's no reason you shouldn't do it. You need to harden all of your systems. Now, what does that mean? What does that entail? How do I harden a system? And if you're brand new to doing system hardening, that's fine. None of us were born with all this knowledge. I totally understand that. And you shouldn't think any less of yourself because of it. The fact that you're here trying to learn about it shows that you've got some grit, and we applaud you for that. So what do we do? Well, great news is that you're not the first person to try to harden a system, right? Why reinvent the wheel? Go out to those lovely interwebs, grab yourself a hardening guide for whatever operating system that it is you're using or whatever system that is you're using. So I've kind of done that for us here. Let's jump into the compTIA and see, here's one for Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8, Security Hardening Guide, right? Very straightforward, very simple. I'm just kind of jump down a little bit. Here's your table of contents so you can kind of see some of the stuff that's going on here. And right here at the top, right after security assessment, we can start looking at physical controls and technical controls and administrative controls, threats that you might have to worry about, common exploits and attacks. So a lot of really good security information in this guide. And then things that you can do to start hardening. So securing during installation. Use things like BIOS passwords, disk partitioning, probably engaging in some sort of disk encryption, right? Network connectivity during the installation process. Post-installation procedures, let's go there. Look at that, yum update, right? Patch the system. It starts right there. Start the firewall and enable it. Seems like a good idea. These are things that are available to you right here in the system that you just installed. Use them. Great. And now here's a guide on how I use them so I don't get lost in the woods trying to figure it out. Hey, just follow these steps. Follow the bouncing ball. Now you've got a hardened system. Here's one for Windows. Windows Server 2016 hardening checklist that I found from the University of Texas, Austin. It was a really good checklist. It kind of goes through all the things you should be doing and then the step-by-steps on how to perform those activities. So as you work through this guide, it had a really good thing. I thought it was a really good guide for us. These are kind of breaking down all the different things, so I'm going to get past that. There you go. Look at that. Auto update via W. You don't say, right? This is known ways to secure your systems. Hardening guides. They're a great thing. So whatever system you're using, run out there, find you a good hardening guide. I'll put these in the learner resources for you so you can take a look at those and see what good ones look like. But that's what we mean. Adding the security mechanisms that are already built into the system or that you can bolt onto the system with relatively ease of use.
Dan, I know that sometimes, like, let's say we have to run an embedded system. It's mission critical. We can't get updates to it. So one of the things that we do is we say, we can't do your method of patching the system. So let's add assistance. Let's air gap that system altogether. So the only way you can gain access is if you have physical access to the building and you can directly, let's say, do a console right into this device. Tell me about compensating controls.
Yeah, so compensating controls are the bastion we run to when we can't do other things. Like just Wes, you laid it out perfectly for me. I don't even have to explain it now. He's the man. That's why I have him as my host here, right? He knows what he's talking about. So we can't update this thing. I actually ran into this at RSA one year. I was talking to a gentleman. He had some medical devices like heart monitors and drug administration tools that ran an embedded Linux or version of Linux on them. And the software was so hooked into it in a way that it could not be updated. So I couldn't apply patches to that system. It breaks the system. What do? That's when we come up with some other security control, a compensating control for the ones that we can't implement. So I can't patch. What else can I do? Well, they created a device. It was a hardware device that they put on networks. It would do something like network access control. It would basically segment those devices off, and only from certain IPs and from certain computers would allow access into those systems. So if you gained access to the network, that didn't mean you still didn't have access to those devices. You had to have gained access to specific machines, which could happen, but it was compensating for those things. And I believe with compensating controls, they need to be at least as effective as the original controls and perform the same duty. Like, why were you wanting security here anyway? It should fall under that rubric, okay? Typically, these fall under two categories. You either have a technical control or a like a policy-based control.
Administrative control?
Yeah, like administrative control. That's a good way to put it. So what's the difference between the two? Easy. A technical control is a piece of technology that you put in place, like that NAC system, or a WAF, right? WAFs are great. I've got a website, I've coded it horribly, and now it's just going to take a complete redo to make it more secure because I'm the worst coder in the world. Whatever. Yeah, that's true. I'll take that. I'll put that on my head. But what do I do until then? Well, I can put a WAF in front of it, and I could still use the WAF after I code it more securely because I'm probably going to miss stuff anyway. A WAF is a compensating control. It's meant to sit in line and go, I'm the gatekeeper. This is what I do, is I check for, oh, what's this HT, or the GET request? It looks weird. Actually, I've looked over here, and now I see that this is a SQL injection. So I'm blocked. Here, let's go to my computer again. I went to some websites, found some free and open source. I'd love to give you guys free resources. Again, we'll be in the learner resources. This is Mod Security 3.0. It's a freely available WAF. Download it, play with it, get some of that hands-on, as I'm always preaching, right? This is for like Apache and Nginx. Here's another one for IIS called WebNight. Again, a freely available WAF. Play around with it. It can be used as a compensating control for your devices that would not normally be able to do that for whatever reason. And those reasons can be various and sundry, but that's what we mean when we start talking about compensating controls. And then administratively, it would be, we make a policy that says, you don't do this, or you must do X before you can do Y. And that is a policy. If you violate it, there will be consequences and repercussions, maybe even dismissal. So don't do that.
You know, Dan, I know there are things, actions, circumstances out there that could affect our business so drastically, puts us completely out of business, right? But the likelihood of that happening might be a gazillion to one. Let me give you an example to kind of like frame this up, all right? The likelihood of you being abducted by an alien, right? Now that's going to be devastating to the continuity and the well-being of your life. But do I really want to go out and maybe purchase alien abduction insurance?
I'm going to go with yes.
Yes. Okay. So tell me a little bit about the concept surrounding this.
Yeah. So basically what Wes is alluding to is risk acceptance. I accept the risk that this might happen. And that could be for a different variety of different reasons. A lot of times it's because the time, effort, or money, or a combination of those three is just too much for very little security. Because a lot of times maybe, yeah, this is a real risk, but if it happens, it's really not going to be that bad. Or if it happens, it'll be super bad, but it's highly unlikely that it'll occur. Okay, I accept that risk. And I just don't do anything. That does occur, and you might find yourself in that position from time to time, and understand that that's okay. But you got to do a proper risk analysis to make sure that that is the case. Ultimately, this is our best guess on most of these things, so just keep that in mind. But risk acceptance is a valid way to go from time to time for don't remediate at all.
In another episode, Dan, one of the things that we talked about was the identification and the validation of a vulnerability's existence. Tell me about how, what is the process that we can go through to ensure that our mitigation strategies that we've implemented are going to be successful?
Yeah, we do need to verify. So this would be the verification process of our mitigation strategies, or the mitigations and remediations that we've actually done. Did it work? Because if you don't do verification, how do you know that what you did worked? How do you know, right? So if you ran Nessus, it said, here are some critical vulnerabilities I've discovered. Here are some possible remediations and mitigations you could engage in. You perform said mediations or mitigations. You don't stop there. You go back and you run Nessus again to see, does it then pick that up again as a vulnerability, or is a new vulnerability now showing up because of my mitigations? This is a constant thing that we do, ultimately you want to get to where you either have risk accepted all that it finds, or you've just risk accepted. That's what you want. That's the game. We're going to continually go over these things and mitigate our risks, and hopefully one day find ourselves in I mean, game change is just about daily, so be aware of that as a fact. So this is something you're going to do as a cycle. It's never going to be a one and done. It's not a destination, or it's not a journey. It's not a destination. It's a journey kind of thing. So just be prepared for that. But that you must verify that your mitigations actually worked. Otherwise, you've been exercising futility. So always make that a part of your remediation strategy.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all the time we have for this episode. Keep in mind, in this episode, Dan showed us what it's, what do we do when we have to establish what normality is through configuration baselines. We talked about hardening systems as well as patching them systems, and well, sometimes we have to accept some stuff, and that's the first journey to healing, right? And then we also have to look at compensation controls, and we talked about verification of those mitigation strategies. We got a lot more coming up in the CySA Plus series, but it's going to take you joining us. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.